I was 16 that October. The kind of 16 that still believes in silly traditions even when you pretend you don't. My name is Mia. I live in a rough part of Ohio, and the last time my older brother, Zeke, 23, and I had done anything together on Halloween, I was small enough to be pulled in a wagon. He texted me that afternoon, "Pumpkins tonight? Last year I can justify it." I took the bus across town with a hoodie, a beanie, and the kind of stubborn nostalgia that feels like armor. We carved on the cracked linoleum of his kitchen, triangles for eyes, lopsided fangs. Zeke made coffee too strong and played the same playlist he'd used since high school. For an hour, it felt normal. Then we looked out at dusk, bruising into night, and decided, on a dare to ourselves more than anything, to go trick-or-treating one last time. We told ourselves it was ironic, a joke, but we still grabbed pillowcases like we used to. Zeke laughed. "Two grown idiots in hoodies will terrify the suburbs." I said nothing and tied my beanie tighter. We started early, just as porch lights blinked on like crooked teeth. Children in plastic masks galloped between stoops. A dad with a thermos told a pirate to slow down. Somewhere a dog howled at a blown-up witch that jerked in the wind. The air smelled like damp leaves and cheap fog machine fluid from the house on the corner. For a while, I forgot what our street felt like at night. The fights through thin walls, the headlights that lingered too long outside, the bottle that had shattered under our mailbox the week before. For an hour, we were just two kids, laughing at decorations, slipping candy bars into our bags like they were proof the world could still be harmless if it tried hard enough. By the time we looped the long block, our pillowcases had a decent weight. Zeke squeezed mine. "You're going to be sick," he said, smiling. "That's the plan," I said. We split at the end of his street. He had a late shift and I had to get home. At my bus stop, the wind knifed through my hoodie, so I tucked the pillowcase under my arm and took out one candy bar to make the weight softer. It was a full-size Snickers, the kind you never get unless you hit the big houses or someone at the end of the night is feeling generous. I unwrapped it and took a bite. It tasted wrong. Not stale wrong. Not old chocolate wrong. It had a bitter, planty aftertaste that didn't belong in caramel and nougat, and a waxy film that clung to the back of my tongue like a bad thought. I chewed, made a face, swallowed anyway, and took another small bite to be sure. The second bite was worse. I felt embarrassed for no reason, like someone was watching me try not to gag. I wrapped the rest and shoved it into my hoodie pocket, wiped my mouth on my sleeve, and told myself to stop being dramatic. The bus was late. I stood under a flickering pole light while leaves scraped the curb. A siren drifted thin across the city. My phone showed 10:54 p.m. when the bus finally grumbled up and sighed open. I climbed on with a handful of other people, two kids in capes, a woman in scrubs, a guy with glitter on his cheekbones and a tired smile. I sat near the middle, pressed my forehead to the cold glass, and watched my reflection ghost over houses and porches and the occasional jack-o'-lantern grin. 5 minutes later, the world tilted. It wasn't dramatic at first. My stomach rolled, then settled. My fingers felt like they had little electric currents running through them, as if I'd stuck my hand in carbonated water. I pulled my beanie off. My head felt too hot. The street outside the window began to smear just a little, like someone had breathed on the glass from the other side. The bus's interior light seemed brighter than it should have been. The sound of the engine grew a layer, like hearing it through a fan blade. I told myself it was low blood sugar. Too much coffee at Zeke's, not enough dinner. I took a breath and held it, the way my therapist once taught me when my chest felt tight. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. My chest refused to listen. My pulse fluttered in my throat like a moth. By the time I got off 2 stops from home, my legs felt unreliable, as if the bones were slightly rubber. The night air slapped me but didn't clear anything. The sidewalk seemed imperceptibly tilted, the houses too tall. I walked fast because walking slowly made my body feel like it would forget how. A man smoking on a porch looked at me too long. A sensor light flared like a camera flash. Somewhere a kid screamed in play, and it vibrated in my skull like a dentist's drill. Inside our apartment, everything smelled wrong. Too bright. The lemon cleaner my Grandma Ruth used, the faint shampoo scent from the bathroom, even the pumpkin guts in the trash. Each smell wore a neon outline. I dropped the pillowcase on the kitchen table, pulled the half-eaten Snickers from my pocket, and stared at it as if it would explain itself. "You're being ridiculous," I told myself. "You're having a panic attack." I had had panic attacks before. This wasn't shaped like those. I went to the bathroom and spit into the sink because my mouth wouldn't stop filling with saliva. I could hear my heartbeat in my gums. When I tried to say, "Grandma," it came out as something slurred and far away. My tongue didn't belong to me. The mirror was unkind. Pupils too big, skin too warm. A girl who looked both feverish and profoundly underwater. The floor did a small, patient tilt. I grabbed the door frame with both hands and felt, clear as a photograph, the click of fear settle. I have a heart murmur. It's never been dramatic, just one of those notes the school nurse always circled and my pediatrician said we'd monitor. Sometimes I could hear it in quiet rooms if my ear was against a pillow. The slightly offbeat flub that made me believe in machines more than in bodies. And suddenly my pulse was a riot. "Nana," I managed. It sounded like someone else saying my name wrong. She was in her bedroom knitting something in the orange light of her nightstand lamp. The TV was playing a black and white movie with the sound low. When she saw my face, the needles stopped. "Mia, I can't." I gestured at my mouth, at the air, at the all of it. My hands shook. My chest wasn't doing the right math. She was 87 and moved faster than anyone I knew. She was beside me with one hand on my back and the other cool on my forehead. "Breathe with me," she said, calm as always. "In, 2, 3, 4, hold, out." I tried. My lungs did not. "What did you take?" she asked, eyes searching mine. "Did someone give you something at that boy's place?" "No," I said, and the syllable came out like a marble dropped down the stairs. "Candy." I fumbled the word out with effort. "Bar, tasted off." Her eyes flicked to the pillowcase on the table, then to my hands. She has seen everything in a long life. War ration lines, a son's addiction, a husband's slow leaving. Her voice stayed steady. "Shoes on. Sit. I'm calling." "Don't drive," I said too fast. "Please. Ambulance." The fear in me had clicked from a general buzz to a narrow, bright point. My heart tacked into hummingbird territory, and then overshot it. Something in my body didn't feel like mine anymore. 911, she told the operator. "My granddaughter, 16, trouble speaking, shaking, heart racing, possibly ingested something." She looked at me, and I nodded like a bobblehead on a bad dashboard. The minutes before the siren were long and gelatinous. My arms trembled as if with cold, while sweat slid down the back of my neck. In the living room, the clock on the wall ticked loud enough to be ridiculous. The candy pillowcase looked obscene, like a bag of bright bait. When I tried to swallow, my throat decided to relearn the mechanics from scratch. My hearing tunneled and expanded by turns. Nana's voice too far. The refrigerator too close, my own breath like paper tearing. When the medics came, they brought light and the smell of winter air and that clack-clack of equipment that remains the same everywhere. A woman about my mom's age knelt and met my eyes the way you do in a storm. "Hey, I'm Reyes. What's your name?" It took 2 tries. "Mia." She put a pulse ox on my finger. "Can you tell me what happened, Mia?" I told her about the taste and my tongue and the bus and the feeling that my blood had turned into bees. She nodded without judgment and glanced at the numbers on her monitor. "Heart rate's up," she said to her partner. 170. She looked back at me. "Any history with your heart?" I nodded. "Murmur, valve, not bad." The words were boulders. Okay, she said. We're going to take you in. She asked me to squeeze her hands. I did. Good. Pupils reactive. She clicked a blood pressure cuff around my arm. The Velcro sounded like thunder. As they wheeled me out, I saw our neighbor's door across the hall crack open. A man in a tank top stared, then pretended he wasn't. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's burnt dinner. The night in the parking lot was too sharp. The ambulance had its interior lit like a spaceship. On the gurney, the motion of the vehicle felt like we were swinging from a rope. Reyes strapped me in and spoke in a low voice that tried to reintroduce me to my body as if I'd been away too long. You're going to feel waves. That's okay. Nothing is chasing you in here. We're just riding the waves till they pass. It's not anxiety, I said, though it was also that. It's wrong. I hear you, she said. We'll run the tests. Did you eat anything else unusual? Any gummies, brownies? No, I said, just the bar. It tasted like dirt. She didn't laugh. She nodded, like that made sense in some universe where candy and soil shared a recipe. She put an oxygen cannula under my nose. The air was cool and tasted like metal and mint. I watched the green lines on her monitor stutter and sprint. She put cold electrodes on my chest. I stared at the ceiling panels and counted the tiny holes in them to keep from crying. The ER was the color of fluorescent hum. An orderly with a jack-o'-lantern pin on his badge joked about busy night for fake blood and real blood. The joke blurred and slid away. They tucked me behind a curtain. A nurse took vials of my blood with quick hands. Someone gave me water and told me to take sips. My legs felt like they were vibrating through the bed. Time swam. A doctor with a weary kindness asked questions I tried to answer in straight lines. He flashed a pen light, frowned at my heart rate, listened with a stethoscope, and made a little that doctors probably practice in school so it doesn't sound like panic. An EKG machine printed out an accordion of me. He said the word sinus tachycardia. He said the word intoxication. My grandma's mouth went into the line it makes when she's carefully not cursing in front of me. They asked for a urine sample. My hands shook so much that the cup clicked against the dispenser. When I came back, the nurse had that look people get when they already know an answer but have to ask the question anyway. Any chance you consumed cannabis tonight? She asked gently. I closed my eyes. No. The doctor came back 15 minutes later and said the words I still hear in the exact same syllables. Your screen is positive for THC. For a second, all the noise in the ER dropped out, like someone put the room underwater. THC, the ingredient in weed. I stared at him and felt something steam-hot rise into my face. Rage and humiliation and fear all braided together. I started and then stopped. The Snickers in my pocket, the bitter aftertaste, the tide that had pulled me under. I looked at Nana. Her face was stone and love. We believe you, she said before anyone else spoke. She looked at the doctor. Somebody put something in a candy bar. The doctor was careful. Edibles can be very strong, and if you're not expecting it, the anxiety and heart rate can be severe. With your underlying valve issue, your body likely overreacted. He lifted his hands, palms out. I'm not accusing you of anything, Mia. I've seen this on Halloween before. It's rare, but I've seen it. I swallowed. My throat worked. So I'm not dying? Not tonight, he said. Soft enough it almost felt like a joke. We're going to watch you for a bit, give you fluids, and something to help with the panic and nausea. Your EKG is okay, fast, but okay. Your oxygen is fine. This will taper. Time resumed in jerks. They hung a bag of clear fluid that climbed into me cold and steady. The medication they pushed settled my edges without stealing all the light. My heart jogged down from a sprint to a run, to something that felt like it belonged to me again. Nana rubbed her thumb over the back of my hand in a small circle like she used to when I was little and febrile with strep. Around us, the ER did what ERs do. Opened and closed and stitched and reassured and failed to reassure. A kid in a cape cried from behind a curtain. A woman in glitter boots laughed too loud and then vomited into a pink basin. A nurse taped an IV and said gently, "Eyes on me," to a man whose eyes kept sliding away. When they discharged me, it was early morning, the gray hour when the world looks like it was erased and redrawn in pencil. The doctor gave me papers and a serious look. "Hydrate, rest. If your heart starts to race like that again or you feel faint, come back." At home, our apartment felt different. Not unsafe, not safe either. Just thin, like a set on a stage when the audience files out. I went to my room and lay on my side and stared at the outline of light seeping around the curtain until sleep found me and pulled me down. When I woke up, the sun was fat and low on the neighbor's brick. The pillowcase of candy sat on the table like a dare. Nana had quarantined it in a clean trash bag as if it could breathe on us. The half-eaten Snickers lay beside it in a Ziploc. I looked at it the way you look at a photo from a time you were happy before you knew what happened next. We called Zeke. He swore and then went quiet, in that way he does when he's angrier than he knows how to say. He checked his bag and tossed anything unwrapped. He asked which street had given us the full-size bars. I could picture the house. 2 plastic skeletons on lawn chairs, a fog machine low to the ground, a bowl on a little table near the mailbox. I couldn't picture the person at the door. Isn't that strange? How some nights give you too many details, and others smudge the face of the person who changed them. We filed a report anyway. The officer was respectful, bored, skeptical, kind. Some mix I still can't untangle. He took the bar in its bag, wrote things on a form, and told me to rest. "It's probably just a prank gone stupid," he said. "Could be a homemade edible that got mixed in by accident." I wanted to ask him if accident makes your heart feel like a wasp nest. I didn't. That night, when the neighborhood went dark again, I stood at the window and looked down at the street. A candy wrapper skipped in a gutter. The lights on the building across from us turned off, one by one. Somewhere a car door slammed. In the glass, my reflection looked back at me with eyes still too wide. I can't tell you who did it. I can't tell you whether it was malice or a stoned idiot's laziness. All I can tell you is this. I took 2 bites of a candy bar that didn't taste right, and for an hour, my body stopped feeling like a place I lived and turned into a room where something bad was happening to someone else. When you're 16, you think you can read a night like a menu. You can't. Sometimes the danger doesn't look like a van creeping slow with its lights off, or a man in a mask, or footsteps behind you on a trail. Sometimes the danger just tastes a little bitter, and you swallow it because you don't want to be the kind of person who makes a fuss. I'm not telling you not to go out on Halloween. I'm telling you this because there's a difference between fear and attention. Fear freezes you on your feet on a bus while the world tilts. Attention is the way my grandma's hand steadied at the base of my skull, the way the medic said, "Ride the waves," the way a girl learns to spit out what doesn't taste like it's supposed to before it gets a chance to learn her name from the inside. I still love Halloween. I still like the cheap fog and the way the air smells like leaves and plastic. But last year, when a kid in a pirate hat reached into our bowl, I watched his mom's eyes scan the wrappers, and I understood her in a way I didn't before. I smiled and told him to take 2. He grinned with vampire teeth and said thank you like he meant it. That night, after the last doorbell's echo sank into the hallway and our porch light clicked off, I wrapped my arms around a quiet house and listened to my heart, steady, imperfect, mine, count us safely forward. I don't remember when Halloween stopped being noisy on our block. Only that it happened so slowly you could almost pretend it didn't. My name is Jenna, and by last October I'd lived across from Evelyn Whitaker for 4 years. She was 87, the kind of neighbor who saved rubber bands from the newspaper and pressed creases into dollar bills before tucking them into birthday cards. Her husband had been a mail carrier. Her hands still folded letters, even when there wasn't anything to mail. She'd lived on the hill, house since 1968. She called it the house with knees. because the porch sagged a little in the middle like a person after a long walk. Halloween used to bring a stream of kids up and down our street, costumes catching on the brittle hydrangeas, a carousel of thank you and one each, sweetie. But lately the churches and the community center had trunk or treats with parking lot floodlights and hot cider. Parents traded door-to-door dark for inflatable pumpkins and security volunteers in orange vests. After a while, you stop lighting your porch because nobody's coming anyway. On our street, you can tell who still tries by how long they wait before flipping the switch off. 7:30 for the cynics, 8 for the hopeful, 10 for the lonely. Evelyn didn't give out candy anymore. She said it like a confession. "My knees, dear, the stairs." And then, with a small stubborn lift of her chin, "And I don't keep a light on for lies." It bothered her, the way grown men in masks could ring and say trick or treat like a password. She worried about opening the door to a lie and finding out too late that it wasn't a child's game. Every year I told her I'd sit with her if she wanted to hand anything out, but she always laughed and waved me off. If they want a peppermint from me, they can come in April. Last Halloween, I told her I'd stay a little while anyway, just to pass the quiet part of the evening with her. The plan was simple. We'd keep the porch light off, the curtains drawn, and talk over Coke floats at her kitchen table while the night wore itself thin. I live 3 houses down on the other side of the street. I could drive my car over so I wouldn't have to walk in the dark, we said, but it was silly. The blocks are small, and the sidewalks are wide, and there's something about October air that makes you feel like a sweater can solve everything. At 7 sharp, a gaggle of little kids came early. The only group we saw all night. 2 princesses, a skeleton, a boy whose dinosaur tail kept falling off, and behind them 2 patient mothers apologizing. I'd left a bowl on my stoop with a handwritten "Take 2, and when I crossed the street, I saw the kids climb my steps like a little parade. The princess in the purple dress looked around, eyes shining, and said, "She trusts us." Her mom squeezed her shoulder and said, "Then do the right thing." I thought about that line later, the way it lodged in my chest. Evelyn's house sits a little above the street, like it was built to watch parades that stopped coming. The front porch is steep. She uses the side entrance that opens into the kitchen, 2 small steps and a metal storm door with a brass handle polished by 50 years of hands. The kitchen is the color of the inside of a peeled potato, soft and clean and ordinary. There's a little table under the window that looks out over the leaf-slicked driveway, and a ceramic rooster timer that looks like it's been telling the same joke since 1973. We turned out the porch lights, locked the deadbolts, and settled at the table with our Cokes. She poured hers into a glass with ice, because she said the sound of the cubes was part of the ritual. We kept our voices low the way people do when the outside world is listening, even though no one was. Night gathered in the window. On the counter, a battery tea light in a ceramic pumpkin made a small, stubborn glow. "Do you miss it?" I asked. "The doorbell?" Evelyn shrugged. "I miss what it was," she said. "I don't miss opening to whatever it is now." She took a careful drink, set the glass down in the exact circle of a coaster. "You'll understand when you've had your share of strangers try the wrong door." "What do you mean?" "Once you live alone a while," she said, "you can hear a knock and know it's not for you." We talked about 100 small things. Her friend from church with the new hip, whether the city would ever fix the streetlight at the corner, how the grocery store had moved the oats again. Our voices made a little tent the wind couldn't get inside. Outside, our block quieted. Car doors, a burst of laughter from far away. The thin, sad meow of the stray that sleeps in the window well of the blue house. 8 came and went. 9 crept in. The thing about quiet is that your body adjusts to it line by line, like stepping into a lake at dusk. You don't notice you're up to your ribs until a fish brushes your thigh, and you remember this is water and not air. We were in the deep part of the quiet when someone knocked. Not the doorbell. The side door. It was a sound I had never heard in that house, because nobody knocked at the side door. People went to the front porch and rang, or they called first and came in the back with a yoo-hoo. This sound was a knuckle on metal, soft but precise, like someone tapping a coin on a bar. It didn't come with a scatter of kid voices, the muffled trick or treat of a parent nudging a shy child. It was a single knock. Then nothing. Evelyn and I both stopped speaking at the same time. I watched her face first, because in other people's reactions, your fear will decide how big to get. Her mouth went into the line it makes when she threads a needle. She didn't move. "Do you want me to?" I started. She shook her head. "No porch light," she said. "We don't answer without light." She tilted her head slightly, listening. "They'll go." We sat. We waited. I could hear the motor of the refrigerator, the tiny clink as one of the ice cubes settled in her glass, a car accelerating 2 blocks over. It amused me how loud my own heart sounded when I decided to listen for it. The knock came again, louder. Not a bang, no anger in it, but the kind of knock people use when they're testing something, a wall, a melon, a person. The metal skin of the storm door hummed for a second afterward. I could picture the brass knob Evelyn polished with Windex on a paper towel every Friday. Could picture a hand floating near it, deciding. Evelyn cleared her throat, and in a voice that was firm and not unkind, she called through the door she couldn't see, "We're not participating tonight?" Silence. Then a voice very close to the door said, "Ma'am?" And even though it was only 1 syllable, my stomach curled inward. It wasn't a child. It wasn't even one of those teenage boys you can tell is trying to make his voice sound deeper. It was a grown man, perfectly calm, not angry, not out of breath. Just close. Evelyn didn't answer. She put her palm flat on the table as if to pin it to the world. We waited. The silence pressed its chest against the pane. What came next was not a knock. It was the sound of a hand on a doorknob. The quick, quiet chick of a thumb depressing a button that didn't depress because the lock was turned. The knob twisted left, right. The storm door itself doesn't lock. The inner door does. The storm door opened, a soft hiss of weather stripping, and the brass knob of the inner door gave a dull, frustrated click. The handle let go. The storm door eased back to its frame and kissed it with a sound so polite I could have imagined it. Evelyn, without taking her eyes off the door, said softly to me, "You can't see through that side glass unless your eye is right against it." Her voice had a thread of information braided through it. "This is how this door works. This is how this night might go," like she was passing me a folded note under the desk. I realized my hands were shaking just enough to make the ice in my glass whisper. I set the glass down on the little rooster coaster and pressed my fingers flat on the table to make them behave. The voice came again, closer and still calm. "Ma'am, it's cold out." Something about the line, banal, human, neutral, made me want to stand up and shove a chair under the knob. It also made me want to pretend I hadn't heard it. Panic lifts and splits like that. Half of you wants to make yourself huge. The other half wants to disappear into the seam where the wallpaper meets the baseboard. Evelyn did neither. She said, in the same steady tone, "We're not opening the door. If you need assistance, call for it." We waited. I could hear my own breath. Somewhere down the hill, a dog barked twice, and then decided against whatever it had intended. The ceramic pumpkin's light made a small sun on the counter. The knob turned again, harder this time, enough to make the house's thin old wood give a small complaint. Then the sound of a hand sliding down the metal of the storm door, like someone wiping their palm. The quiet that followed was not relief. It was the kind of quiet that arrives when a person outside is thinking. "Do you want me to call someone?" I mouthed. Evelyn shook her head once. "Not yet. There's an unreasonable dignity in old houses when they're being tested." The door held, the lock held, the paint did its job. All a door can do is be exactly what it is. On the wall by the stove, a calendar with kittens hung open to October. Evelyn took one slow breath. I matched it. There was movement on the other side of the door. A weight shifting, a shoe scraping at the mat. Then a new sound. A fingernail or a ring gently tapping the glass. A delicate little tick-tick-tick, like he was testing for a crack he couldn't see. Evelyn stood up, but not to go to the door. She went to the kitchen light switch and turned the overhead off, leaving only the weak lamp over the sink and the pumpkin light on the counter. The room flattened into a softer dark. The window turned into a square of night. She came back and sat down. If the house was going to have to tell the difference between inside and out, it wanted less glare. I hadn't known it until that moment, but of course she had learned the light in this house by bones and by heart. "Ma'am." The voice said it again, as if he were reminding us who we were. The storm door opened and closed in a slow rhythm, as though he was testing the hinge, maybe looking for a chance to slip a foot in against the frame. I pictured the thin gap where the weather stripping had loosened last winter. I pictured his hand as an animal trying to nose its way in. Evelyn's jaw moved. She was worrying a thought from one side to the other. "Evelyn," I whispered, "I can call." "Now," she said, so softly I almost didn't hear. I stood up and my chair legs made an obscene noise on the linoleum. I pulled my phone from my back pocket and dialed. Pressed the speaker to mute. When the operator answered with her calm rehearsal of location and emergency, I spoke in the same low voice I'd used all night, like anything louder would break something delicate and important in the room. "There's someone at my neighbor's side door," I said. I gave our street, the house that sagged in the middle, my name. "He's not forcing entry. He's testing it." "Is there a vehicle?" she asked. I thought of the hill, the way it gave a slice of the street, but not the curb below. "I can't see," I said. "We're in the kitchen, side door." "Stay on the line," she said. "Units are en route." Evelyn hadn't looked at me since I stood. She kept her gaze on the door, the way you stare at a dog you don't know as it decides whether your hand is food. Then she did something I didn't expect. She spoke again, louder, and pitched her voice to Carrie. "My son is on his way," she lied. "My neighbor's with me." She put her palm flat on the table again. "We're calling the police. You should leave." The voice outside went quiet. The house swallowed. I realized, distantly, that my shoulders hurt from being at my ears. I put them down. A sound I can only describe as curious came next. The slow, soft scrape of a shoe sole finding purchase on something narrow. The metal lip of the step, followed by a little from the storm door as if it had been opened and then caught by its closer. I pictured him leaning to try to see through the sliver of glass, pressing his forehead close and cupping his hands. I pictured his breath fogging our side of the idea of a window. He tapped the glass again. 3 polite knuckles. Then he said, so quietly I felt the words more than heard them, "You don't have to be scared." The back of my neck prickled. Not because it wasn't true, I was scared, but because of the gentle entitlement of the sentence. It assumes he can name what is happening in my body, and that he has some say in it. It assumes the authority to soothe, which is a cousin of the authority to frighten. Evelyn, who has watched men explain her own feelings to her for 8 decades, did not answer him. She looked at me, held up one finger, "Wait," and then flicked her eyes toward the sink. I didn't understand until I heard it. Tires, low and deliberate, slowing at the bottom of the hill. The dispatcher was still on the line. "Ma'am, I need you to stay with me." And I wanted to say I hear them, but didn't. The tires climbed. A pair of headlights swelled a white curve on the ceiling, sweeping like the hands of a clock. If you've waited for help, you know this part. The sound of it arriving knits your insides back together in exactly the places they were about to tear. The man outside heard it too. His weight shifted. The storm door sighed one last time. Then footsteps, measured, casual, not hurried, crossed the small side stoop, down the 2 steps to the driveway, gravel whispering under rubber. A silhouette slipped down the hill toward the darker part of the street. "Units are arriving," the dispatcher said. Her voice had changed slightly. the part of the script that starts to let you go. A cruiser slid to the curb out front, light bar quiet, headlights white. Another turned onto our block from the other end. No sirens. It's that kind of neighborhood. Don't spook the deer, don't wake the babies. No need to broadcast. 2 officers got out. One went to the sidewalk, scanning. The other walked up our driveway and paused halfway, hand raised in a stillness that said, "I am listening to this house." Evelyn stood, smoothed the front of her cardigan like she was about to greet a guest, and then didn't move toward the door because she is not foolish. She called out, "Kitchen!" and the officer's shoulders dropped a fraction like a muscle unclenching. "Ma'am," he said, gentle at the edge. "You okay?" We were. He checked the side door, the sill, the frame. He looked at the knob and the lock with a little flashlight in the palm of his hand. He bent to the mat and ran 2 fingers under it. I realized I was holding my breath and let it go. He shook his head slightly. No spare key, or at least not there. He shined his light up and down the driveway, across the garage door, over the hedge to the neighbor's fence. He asked if we'd seen any vehicle. We hadn't. He asked for a description. We didn't have one. "Probably just someone looking for a warm porch," he said. He said it the way you hang a picture slightly crooked on purpose so the room won't feel too staged. "We'll circle the block. Keep the doors locked. Call if you hear anything else." We thanked him. I wanted to ask what anything else sounded like and didn't, because we both already knew. He left. The tires whispered away, and the house inhaled in the particular way houses do when the people in them remember how to breathe. For a long minute, neither of us spoke. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. The ceramic pumpkin flickered and then steadied. A trick-or-treat wrapper skipped down the street in a small gust and stuck to the storm drain. Somewhere, far away, a football game on the radio took a breath between plays. Evelyn poured a little more Coke into her glass, and it made that cheerful tsk against the ice, like nothing had happened. She took 1 sip. Then she put the glass down carefully, like she needed to place it exactly where it had started, and said, without looking at me, "You have to be careful about which parts of your fear you reward." I didn't know what that meant until she kept talking. "If I open the door, that rewards his belief he can ask," she said. "If I shout and rattle the blinds, that rewards whatever part of him wants to make me jump. If I go silent, that rewards my own imagination, until it outruns me." She put her hand palm down on the table again. "So we do the plain thing. We don't open. We call. We let the door do its job. We let the night pass." I thought about the way he'd said, "You don't have to be scared," and how every cell in me had wanted to show him that I was, in fact, very good at being scared. I thought about the princess at my bowl and her mother saying, "Do the right thing." I thought about how sometimes the right thing is as small and hard as a locked brass knob you polish every Friday. We sat a while longer, letting our voices come back in small, ordinary pieces. The cost of mushrooms, whether the library's heater was working yet. At 9:30, we heard 2 teenagers laugh as they cut down the alley. One threw a candy wrapper and the other told him to pick it up. The house creaked the way old houses do when the night cools their bones. When I stood to go, the world felt tilted half a degree back toward okay. "Text me when you're inside," Evelyn said, and it was not a suggestion. I pulled on my jacket, flipped up my hood against the thin damp, and opened the storm door just enough to slip out. The air hit my face with that clean metallic smell October keeps in a drawer for nights like this. I locked the storm door behind me and listened to the interior lock answer from the other side as Evelyn turned it. For a second, I pictured the shape a person makes on the other side of a door and felt my stomach tip. The street looked empty in the way you cannot trust. Lawns too dark, cars turned into hunched animals, porch lights on timers pretending someone was awake. I walked to my car with my keys already in my hand, though I wasn't sure a key in a fist ever saved anyone from anything besides their own nerves. The neighborhood seemed to be holding its breath again. I got in, locked the doors, turned the engine, and watched my own face flicker in the rear view as the headlights swung across the hydrangeas. At the bottom of the hill, I paused. 2 blocks down, the street light that had been out for months burned steady and orange, like someone had decided today was the day to fix it. Back in my own driveway, I sat for a second with the engine off, listening. The house across from me had a jack-o'-lantern still lit, a goofy smile doing its best. I walked up my steps, checked that the bowl was empty but not stolen. 2 wrappers lay on the mat, like evidence of restraint. Inside, I slid the deadbolt, then slid it again just to feel the click. My cat blinked at me from the hallway and gave a single reproachful chirp like I'd interrupted her opinion. I texted home to Evelyn. A minute later, my phone pinged. "Sleep well, dear. Doors are doors." I brushed my teeth and thought about that sentence. Doors are doors. They're not promises. They're not guarantees. They're lines. You draw them, and then you keep them. You reinforce them with wood and paint and habits and neighbors, and the kind of lies that give you time until help climbs the hill. I lay in bed and looked at the shadow the streetlight drew on my ceiling fan. Somewhere, a siren unspooled and then wound itself back up. My heartbeat slowed to something I recognized. I thought about the voice at the side door saying, "Ma'am," until there was nothing left of it but the shape of the word. I told myself I wasn't going to reward the parts of my fear that wanted a bigger room. I would let the plain thing be the plain thing. A man came and tried the knob of a door that was not his. We didn't open. Someone drove by. The night decided, as it usually does, to become morning. I don't know who he was. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if he chose our house because it was dark or because it was old or because he liked the feel of brass under his palm. I only know the sound a storm door makes when it opens an inch and then politely closes again. I know the weight of a phone in a shaking hand. I know the way an old woman's voice can hold a line taut enough for 2. This year, if kids come, I think I'll sit on my own stoop with a bowl and a light and let them take 2. If no one comes, I'll leave the light on a little longer than I used to. Not because I'm braver now exactly, because I understand better that fear isn't a verdict. It's information. It tells you you're at a threshold. A door is a door. You can open it or not. You can decide whose voice gets to come through. And on a quiet street on a cold night, sometimes the scariest thing is how small the sound of your own lock can be, and how much safety it buys when it holds. My mother always said there are 2 kinds of wrong places. The ones you can point to on a map, and the ones that happen when a normal place gets used for something it wasn't meant for. The footpath by the creek behind our subdivision was the second kind. On city brochures, it's Creekside Greenway, 3 miles of crushed limestone threading through cottonwoods and backyards, with tasteful benches memorializing people who did everything right and died anyway. I'm Riley, 22 that fall, back home after college because rent is a joke. And my mother is Marin, a nurse who walks like it's a prayer. We did the loop most mornings before her shifts, down the hill past Mr. Lutz's mailbox with its metal trout, left at the eucalyptus that never knew it was in Ohio, then right onto the path where the world thins to water and leaves, and the occasional jogger whose calves make you reconsider bread. It was October, brittle and sweet. The creek ran low and showed its rib cage of stones. Someone's spaniel had left perfect paw prints in the damp silt like punctuation. The sky was that fast-moving gray that looks like it's thinking. If you had paused us at the little wooden mile marker with the city logo burned into it and asked, "Would you like to feel unsafe in 10 minutes?" we would have laughed. I was wearing my brother's hoodie. My mother had a knit cap with a pom-pom that made her look like a forgiving cartoon. We didn't notice the first thing. We argued for 5 minutes about whether the neighbor kid was being passive-aggressive by moving our trash can 2 houses down. He was. And while we dissected motives like surgeons, we walked past a zombie made of trash bags hanging by a cord from the power line that crosses the trail near the road. Someone had taped glow sticks under the plastic to make the face. It was dumb, but it was late October. We shrugged at the season. We noticed the second thing because it moved when there was no wind. It was a plastic leg, life-sized, wedged into a split in a cottonwood about 5 feet up the trunk at the bend where the trail curves toward the old culvert. Whoever had shoved it there had twisted it so the toe pointed delicately down, as if the rest of the body were on the other side of the tree, lost in bark. Someone had drawn a small heart at the ankle in ballpoint pen. The skin tone of the plastic didn't match ours or anyone we knew. It was the tan of catalog models and medical mannequins. It was obscene because it was almost funny, and things that are almost funny make you feel complicit. My mother stopped dead. "No," she said softly, like to a dog about to drink antifreeze. I laughed too quickly. "Prank!" The sound I made ricocheted off the water and came back wrong. The leg didn't look store-bought Halloween. It looked like it had spent a season in someone's garage next to an old stroller and a stack of paint cans, then got donated to a purpose. We should have turned back there. That's the sentence that keeps presenting itself when I replay the morning. Here's your edit point. But my mother, who has calmed men bleeding from the cheekbones at 2 a.m., hates giving the worst thing in the room the dignity of dictating what happens next. She bent down, picked up a wrapper at her feet, pink, with a cartoon face and a word in Korean, and slid it into her jacket pocket like she was collecting evidence without admitting that's what she was doing. "We'll tell Parks," she said, "if we see a maintenance guy." The third thing waited just beyond the culvert, where the trail widens into a clearing before slipping back under the cottonwoods. At first, I thought it was laundry, a line of little white shirts strung between 2 trees. Then the shirts became shoes as we got closer, small sneakers and sandals threaded through their laces and knotted to a twine garland that sagged in the middle under their weight. They were all children's sizes. Some had cartoon characters on the sides, scuffed in a specific way that says Jersey barrier at the elementary school drop-off. Others were the anonymous kind, Velcro nearly bald, toes rubbed down to thread. A pink crock had glitter embedded in it like a rash. Mud had dried along the treads in a ridged brown that made my tongue feel thick. Below the garland, on the ground, lay 3 tricycles, 2 red, 1 blue. Rust had salted the handlebars. One had a plastic tassel on the grip that the wind teased, a little whispering cheer. Someone had propped a doll's head on the blue trike's seat. The doll's hair was matted into a half-melted helmet. One glass eye sat wrong in the socket. The other was missing, leaving an oval of darkness. There were flies, though the morning was cold. My mother said my name in the tone she used when I was small and about to put a bead in my nose. "Riley." "I see it," I said, and even as I said it, I looked away the way you do from small disasters, as if your eyes can make them less real by refusing to be generous. A jogger appeared behind us, slowed, took in the scene, and sped up again with his eyes on the creek, as if that had been his plan all along. A woman with walking poles came toward us from the other direction, stopped, frowned, not at the installation but at our faces, then veered onto the grass and skirted the clearing with the set jaw of a person who has already preemptively decided not to be involved. It occurred to me, with a sour little click, that the normal world has ways to move around things. I don't know why we went further in. Curiosity isn't neutral. It's an agreement you make with whatever wants to climb inside your head. But we stepped into the clearing because I needed to know whether it stopped. It didn't. Beyond the garland and the trikes, deeper in the trees, someone had hung cages. Not real cages, wire baskets, an old hamster enclosure, a metal milk crate. But they read as cages because of their doors and because of what was in them. Baby dolls, all different kinds and sizes, torn or stained or drawn on with markers, stuffed into the wire so fingers stuck out between the bars like the aftermath of a frantic decision. One had been cut open and restitched with bright red embroidery thread that puckered the vinyl skin. Another had a pacifier taped over its mouth with blue painter's tape, which is somehow worse than duct tape because it's so easy to tear off once you think of it. They weren't hung high, these cages. They hung at eye level, human height, which is how you know they were hung for us and not for the birds. Below them, someone had chalked on the ground in big loopy letters, "Art is a mirror. Look." The chalk had been stepped on. The word mirror showed a print from a shoe with stars on the sole. The white dust made a ghost of the word up the path. My mother made a small, involuntary sound in her throat. It wasn't fear. It was anger. "Whoever did this," she said, "doesn't care who walks here." "Kids," I said reflexively, like a person who has never been burned saying hot to show they know the word. "An adult," she said. "Only an adult takes time like this." We argued in low voices there in the nearly empty morning while the creek made its soft, broken radio sounds. Should we take it down? Should we photograph it? Leave it so Parks could see the whole? These are the little ethics that pretend to be decisions when the decision is really whether to stay in the radius of something. "Let's at least call," my mother said finally, practical as always. A hand-lettered city sign at the trailhead offered a number for non-emergency, Parks and Public Works. She scrolled, squinting in the finicky light. I wandered and took photos as if I were doing something valuable by breaking the scene into squares. That's when I saw the bucket. It sat behind a tree like it was trying to be caught. White with a paint-splattered handle, crud at the lip. On top lay a coil of twine, a pair of snips, a fat marker with a split tip. Inside I could see doll arms and legs tossed like silverware into a drawer, and another head, face down. The scalp had a hole where hair plugs had been rooted and then ripped out. The flesh of the vinyl looked chewed. There was also a baby shoe, newish, with a little rocket ship on the side. It was so clean compared to everything else that my stomach went hot and cold at the same time. "Mom," I said. She came. She looked. She put her hand on my elbow with the pressure of comfort and control. "We're leaving," she said. "We'll tell the city. We're not pulling this down with our bare hands." We turned. We were going to walk out the way we came. We didn't because there was a man standing on the path, not 20 feet away, holding another white bucket by the handle the way a fisherman holds a pail of minnows. If you've ever looked at a person and had your skin register facts before your mind can name them, you know the sensation. He was short and soft in the middle, somewhere in his 60s, wearing a navy windbreaker too thin for the morning, gray sweatpants, running shoes so new the soles were still white. His hair was thin and long in back, the kind men keep out of a teenage promise to themselves. The wind would have moved it if there had been wind. He had the kind of mouth that disappears when it's not being used. His eyes were small and shiny, the way raccoon eyes are shiny when the porch light catches them. A smell came with him that I couldn't place at first, sweet and chemical and warm, until I recognized it as old basement with a seasonal note of plastic. He took us in. He did not look surprised. He smiled like a person who has practiced not showing teeth. He didn't step toward us at first. He did something worse. He tilted his head like we were an exhibit, and he was trying to find the right angle. "Are you the artist?" my mother asked, her voice so even you could drink from it. She does that with men who might be drunk or high or angry. She gives them a clean line to step on so the ground won't shift even if they do. He brightened at the word like a dog at walk. "I am," he said, and lifted the bucket an inch in a little toast. "I thought I'd get here before the vandals." His voice was light and nasal, the kind you hear under the hum of a craft store. "What do you think?" My mother didn't answer that question. "This is public land," she said. "You can't put—" She gestured at the cages because there was no adequate word that would not give him too much. "It's a commentary," he said gently, as if we were slow. He stepped one step closer into the clearing, and the bucket thudded against his leg. On neglect, on how people throw away children, on the disposable culture. He said the last phrase like it was a certificate he'd earned. "Whose shoes are those?" I asked, and surprised myself with the sharpness of it. "Where did you get them?" "Estate sales," he said immediately. "Thrift stores? The dolls are from the landfill store. Have you been?" "They have bins. People throw away everything. It's good to show it back to them." "Mirror." He pointed with his chin at the chalk. It felt obscene to watch his chin point at anything. "You're upsetting people," my mother said. He looked briefly, almost admirably, confused. "It's Halloween," he said. palms out like a magic trick. It's context. People like spooky. Not this, she said. I saw you, he said, as if to change the subject from whether our reaction counted. You walked past first and didn't even look. Then you came back. He smiled again. Thinner. That's how you know it works. Parks will remove it, my mother said. And you don't put more up. He looked past us at his work, bathed it with his gaze like a lamp. They already removed the first set, he said. I documented it before they did. He lifted his phone as proof. There was gray dust on the squat black case from the chalk. It's okay. It's not permanent. He looked at me then, direct, and something in his expression shifted, like a cloud thinning against the sun. You look like you could appreciate it. I didn't move. The creek gurgled like it was trying not to laugh. What's your name? My mother asked him, which was not for information. It was to see if he would give it. Ethan, he said too quickly, like he had just thought of it. I'm local. Then you know the rules, my mother said. You take it down yourself. He blinked, and in his blink, I saw him deciding how much we were worth to his narrative. The rules are for people who don't have anything to say, he said pleasantly. If you're offended, walk around. That's what everyone does. He gestured with his bucket toward the path where the woman with poles had slid past. So precisely, he might have rehearsed it. We're not everyone, my mother said. He smiled, and the smile showed a bottom tooth that had gone gray at the edge. No, he said. You're not. Silences have shapes. This one had hard corners. Birds resumed a conversation above us that we hadn't noticed was on pause. Far away, a siren wound up and down like a girl practicing scales. Let's go, my mother said to me, very low, and touched my sleeve. We walked. We didn't run because running is a story you give to someone else. We passed him with the careful gap people leave for bees. He smelled like dust and a sweet, wrong hint of apples. He watched us go. He didn't say anything like come back later or you'll see. He just stood with his bucket at his thigh, a man waiting to be left alone with what he'd made. We found a city maintenance worker near the little bridge at Oak Avenue. He had a pickup with the seal on the door and a face that existed entirely under the brim of his hat. My mother did the talking. He listened with the patient eyes of a person who has already heard the middle of this story in other costumes. I'll check it out, he said, and you could see him recalibrating his day around having to be the adult for other adults. You two don't touch it. We won't, my mother said, which was true now whether or not it had been 5 minutes ago. We went home and made phone calls. The Parks number again. The non-emergency police line because there were shoes and because the line in my mother's mouth said this is going to sit wrong on me if we do nothing. I uploaded the photos to a form that asked me to rate my concern as low or medium high, as if a checkbox could hold what the cages felt like. Then I took a shower and watched pinkish creek mud coil down the drain and thought about how the water and soap don't carry everything away. Some things leave a ring if you don't scrub. By afternoon, word had moved the way it moves now. A mom on the neighborhood Facebook group posted a blurry photo with the caption, "Anyone else see this on the Greenway?" And 100 comments flowered in the next hour. Half were sensible. Call Parks. This is not okay. My kids use that path. And half were the kind that make you want to pour sugar into your router. It's art. Lighten up. Snowflakes freak out over dolls now. At least it's not needles. Someone posted a link to a photography blog about outsider art interventions. Someone else zoomed in on the baby shoe with a rocket ship and asked if anyone recognized the brand, as if that would fix anything. By evening, the city had sent a crew. They combed the clearing in orange vests, loaded the cages into the bed of a truck like hauling away junk after an estate sale. They took the tricycles, the leg, the shoes. One worker used a putty knife to scrape chalk from the limestone, the letters, "Art is a mirror," smeared into milk. The garland snapped as they took it down, a small, ugly sound that turned heads. A group of us stood at the edge of the scene like mourners who couldn't agree on the deceased. A boy on a bike asked his mom in a loud whisper if the dolls were hurt. She said too brightly, "No, sweetie, they're just old." He wasn't there when the crew came. The man. Or maybe he was, and we didn't recognize him without his bucket and his permission. He didn't need to be. His absence had already been installed. The next morning, of course, there were new things. Not many. But the wire where the garland had been left a mark on the bark, and someone had threaded a single shoe there as if to say, "You missed a spot." A doll's hand lay in the weeds like a white moth. The word "look" ghosted the trail where the chalk had sunk into pores. The city crews cleaned again. The maintenance guy at the bridge and I learned each other's names. His was Tony. He started to wave when he saw us and would raise his eyebrows in a question that meant quiet or not quiet. We started bringing a trash grabber on our walks, but we never touched anything that could be arranged into meaning. A week later, my mother ran into him. I wasn't there. She told me how it went with the flat tone she uses for things she is done with. It was late afternoon. The light had that gold from the side that makes spiders visible. He came from the opposite direction with his bucket and no eye contact. She said, "Sir," and he stopped as if pulled by an invisible string. "People are scared," she said. He looked at the creek behind her, not at her face. "People live inside their phones," he said. "They walk right by everything. I make them look." She took a breath in through her nose, the way she does when she's about to stick a needle. "You could hang your art in a gallery," she said. "People will look, people who consent." He laughed. It was not a friendly sound. "Galleries," he said, and then a word that made her mouth go thin. "I don't need permission from people who sell color by the yard." "You need permission to use public land," she said. And then, because it's a sentence she would say to anyone about anything, "You need permission to use people." He stared at her then like he was measuring her for something invisible. "You're the nurse," he said, and it took her a beat to realize he meant the way she moved, the way she talked to him, the practical coat she wore. "You see worse than this every day. Don't be squeamish." "It's not squeamish to know where a thing belongs," she said. "The city will charge you if you keep this up." He smiled his polite thin line. "They won't catch me," he said. "They like to sleep." And then he walked away, bucket ticking against his leg, windbreaker whispering. She called me and said, "He'll keep doing it until someone makes him stop." "Someone like who?" I asked. Because even after a week of phone numbers and forms, I wanted there to be a bigger adult we hadn't tried. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe nobody." Her voice had that tired elasticity that comes at the end of a 12-hour shift when she's handed people back to themselves all day and has to remember how to do it for her own. For a while, it became part of the landscape, the way encampments and yard signs and the smell of a dead raccoon become part of the landscape if you give anything enough time. Little bursts of wrong would bloom at the edges of the trail. 3 shoes like a sentence fragment. A doll torso propped in the crook of a sapling. A basket with a ribbon threaded through its bars. Sometimes they disappeared by noon. Sometimes they lasted a day. You could watch people negotiate them. A glance away, a quick photo, a muttered "really?" to no one. When it rained hard, the pieces went quiet underwater. When the city mowed, the mower bent around them like grass around a rock. In December, it stopped. Snow came and stayed, and anything left out there went soft and then hard and then harmless under the crust. The city put up signs in January about unauthorized installations prohibited. They stapled them to posts with clean little squares of metal. In March, someone had peeled one back and drawn a smiley face behind it. The paper went gray at the edges like a burn. I still think about him. Not with horror. That burned off mostly, in the practicalities in the snow, but with the same complicated nausea I get when I pass the house where that pit bull is always tied to the porch. He didn't touch us. He didn't chase us. He made a place be used wrong and called it mirror and waited for people to bring their faces near it. If you need an ending, here, in April, the city planted 2 serviceberry trees in the clearing and put a bench between them with a new brass plate that says, "For all who walk here." In June, I watched a toddler smear a service berry across his chin and scream with pleasure while his mother laughed and tried to keep the juice off his shirt with a napkin that had no chance. In July, I saw Tony fish a hubcap out of the creek with a rake and hold it up like a moon. In August, a thunderstorm ripped through at supper time and left a rainbow snagged in the cottonwoods like a cheap ribbon. Every now and then, though, I'll see a single shoe. Not a pair. Just one, by the trail, innocent as a dropped mitten. And for a split second my mouth will fill with the taste of that October, the smell of vinyl and chalk dust, the weight of my mother's hand on my sleeve, his bucket ticking against his leg. I'll feel the little electric question run up my spine. Did he put it there? Or was it just a shoe? Then I'll pick it up with 2 fingers, look for a name sharpied inside, and set it on the bench like a sane ritual. Because my mother is right. Some places are wrong because of maps, and some because of how we use them. The only counterspell I've found for the second kind is to use them for what they were meant for again. To walk, to breathe, to stand under trees whose only installation is the light.